Well, for the latest on reaction in Ukraine, let's bring in France 24's Gulliver Cragg in Kyiv. Gulliver, what more can you tell us?
Well, the Ukrainians' aim here, of course, is to not be forced into an unjust peace that they think would not be a very lasting peace. And that's what the 28-point plan originally presented looked like. Now, they've had these negotiations with the Americans and with 3 European countries in Geneva, and some details of a new plan have been leaked, but nothing's been officially announced other than the fact that there is a modified version of the plan, and the Americans and the Ukrainians are saying that they're happy with the progress that's being made. Volodymyr Zelensky, though, saying that there is still a lot more to do. There's a feeling here that the pressure is easing a little bit, especially because Marco Rubio indicated that that deadline of Thursday was not a hard and fast deadline, and the aim was simply to get it done as soon as possible. And I think that there is also a feeling that basically either Ukraine will sign a version that has been significantly changed and really does reflect Ukraine's needs and is considered fair to at least a significant part of the Ukrainian population. And in that case, Russia probably won't sign it. Or perhaps the pressure from the Americans will actually be greater, and they won't be able to include so many of those things that were leaked to the press. And then the Ukrainians could be facing a very hard choice as to whether to sign it or not. As Volodymyr Zelensky said a few days ago, risk losing a major partner, the support of the United States. But in that case, it will be a very difficult decision indeed, and there might be a temptation to sort of call the Russians bluff, because there are a lot of analysts here who are saying very reassuringly, don't worry, no matter what happens, the Russians won't sign it anyway, because they want to continue the war. Of course, continuing the war is not the ideal outcome for most Ukrainians, but the feeling when this 28-point plan was announced of being forced into really, a really terrible peace agreement with all sorts of terrible international implications, really. I mean, I think that the feeling is that if that can be staved off and we're back to square one with the war carrying on, that's a less bad outcome than the one that seemed to be looming when Donald Trump suggested he might immediately cut aid to Ukraine as from Thursday and stop intelligence sharing, crucially, if Ukraine didn't sign on the dotted line.
And yet it does seem as if Ukraine does have to walk a very delicate line with the U.S. on the one hand, showing gratitude, on the other hand, trying to be tough enough to not lose everything. How is Zelensky going to manage that going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, you see, they have to keep expressing gratitude, even though pundits in Ukraine and internationally are suspecting the Trump administration of really colluding with the Russians, of really wanting to help the Russians achieve their objectives. You don't hear anything like that coming out of anyone in the Ukrainian government, who are all trying to be as diplomatic as possible with the aim of bringing Donald Trump back on side, hoping that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor for the United States, is on their side in this. And we see the Europeans also playing a sort of similar game. There were some very, very sharp reactions when this 28-point plan initially surfaced in the media, before the Europeans realized that Donald Trump was actually serious about it, at least at that moment. Since then, they've tried to be a lot more diplomatic, but we've had pretty firm remarks, particularly from the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz this morning, saying that really a just and lasting peace is needed, and it can't be done so quickly. And so I think that the Ukrainians are hand in hand with the Europeans. One thing worth bearing in mind, though, is that, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky's team is a team that has its popularity much diminished after the recent corruption scandal. A lot of people in Ukraine do not have confidence in Andriy Yermak, who led that Ukrainian delegation to Geneva, which means that if they do end up signing anything and then things don't go well, it could go very badly indeed for the current Ukrainian administration.
Gulliver, thanks for that. France 24's Gulliver Cragg in Kyiv.